This is Macro Machine. Everything I am about to show you can be done in Macro Machine for free. The paid version of Macro Machine Studio, takes all of what I'm about to show you to the next level and is built to be the ultimate tool for people who want to build presets with the macro system professionally. More on that in a while. It will take a while to show you everything you can do in Macro Machine for free. We are going to start general, go through lots of UI stuff, but let's start with something a little better to look at. So I will just copy those same nodes, import from Clipboard, and this looks fun. Certainly more colorful at least. Now, I'm going to start by clicking this little hamburger icon up here, which gets us back just this default area that shows when you load in Macro Machine with nothing else going on. And we are going to start with one of those things that even if you don't want to build macros yourself, I think you will find tremendously valuable. Right after I note just this little import area, you can import a file, a .setting file, or a DRFX pack, or that import from Clipboard, which I really like. It makes things so smooth. But next to that, we have this mini macro explorer area. This specific UI is really helpful when we talk about exporting, so we will talk about that when we talk about exporting, but we have a full macro explorer we can click to open up here, and things start getting exciting quick because this loads right into the directory where any installed DRFX packs are located. So I can scroll and see all these DRFX packs that I have previously loaded into Resolve. And you can see lots of them are enabled, lots of them are disabled. So if I find an example, something like this Layout Pro V2, I do have delete options, but deleting things can be scary. If I just want to hide this from Resolve, I can just select that and come to disable selected, and then that will change that to disabled and it will no longer show up in Resolve. But even more exciting, if I go back and enable that again, I can open up this DRFX pack and see all of the included presets, and I can selectively disable individual presets. That changes to disabled, individual presets inside of an installed DRFX pack. I know it's super popular for a single DRFX to include, several dozen different titles, effects, and generators. So now you can selectively hide some of those presets without having to actually go and find the file, the DRFX pack, open that up, find the presets, remove those, repackage it all back up, and install again. This is so easy. You can also change the thumbnail for any of these after the fact. That's really cool. And one of the real title features I'm going to show off by going back to, I have a random pack of stuff I gave away for Christmas years ago. I have a few masks and like a 3D text effect. So if I come to this rectangle mask, I can open this, and this actually opens it in the main Macro Machine workspace. You can see what I pasted from the clipboard is over here in this other tab, but then it opens up this rectangle mask effect, and you can see the controls that make this. So if I go back to Resolve, again, give myself a new version of this effect. In my effects, I search for rectangle. I have the SSC rectangle mask, drop it on, and you can see it gets masked. And you can also see right at the top, we have mask soft edge. Down at the bottom, we have position and size. But back in Macro Machine, what if I want this position and size to be at the top of this list? Oh, now this is a change I made, and I could export this to a new file. I could export to a new copy of this somewhere else in the edit page or somewhere else like that. Or I can export to source DRFX. If I click that, that gets exported. You can see Resolve refreshed if I grab, again, a new copy of this effect and search in effects rectangle mask, drag and drop it on in the inspector, position and size at the top. So without messing with any raw files or opening up the folder architecture or any of that, you can take an installed effect and further customize it and save it back over itself. Whether you will want to do that with the actual single copy of the effect is up to you. A lot of times if you want to create a sort of a new preset for an effect, you can always just save it back out to Resolve, which let's talk about how to do some of that. If I didn't want this to export to source, I could always just export to edit page. That kicks me back to this mini explorer window because I would want this to be saved as an effect. So I would open up effects. I could come to something like test, select that. I will rename this like rectangle mask alt. And if I made some other change, Let's just to quickly demonstrate, let's change this footage center to be on top this time. Export to edit page. Resolve should refresh there as well. It does. So back in effects, if I search now for rectangle mask alt, here it is. I drop it on this copy of the effect. Footage center is at the top. And that also maintains the actual copy here. This gives you so much control over any installed third-party effects you have added to Resolve. But what if you want to play around with this system? You don't have any extra third-party effects. Well, in Macro Explorer, you also have this Edit Default Effects. When I click this, I will get a pop-up because this specific tool on Windows needs to run as an administrator, so I can relaunch to do that. But once that is done, oh, that also got rid of what I had open. Warning. Open Macro Explorer, Edit Default Effects. And here, these are all of the effects that come included in DaVinci Resolve. I have already messed with some of these. So if I open something like binoculars, you can see a change I actually previously made was this height and width. Those were on the bottom. So let's just take this eye position, move it up to the top. And before I do that, let me pull over the binoculars. See, this says eye position at the bottom. But in Macro Machine, if I change that eye position to the top and export to source DRFX, Resolve should catch that. There we go. And then back in Resolve, if I get rid of that, drag a new copy of binoculars on. Now at the top is eye position. So you can already see some of the wild control that Macro Machine gives you, really thanks to this Macro Explorer functionality. There is one sort of step further on this process that I'll show you once we've covered a few more bases, because it really brings everything together, but it's so cool. It's so cool. When it comes to updating installed effects, oh, actually, there's a few things I want to show you. But when we circle back to that, it's going to be very cool. But for now, let's move on. I've grabbed these nodes again, and I will just import from Clipboard, and we will catch up on general Macro Machine-ness. We have this nodes view like you saw. If you have multiple macros open, you can right click on these for some nifty options, including set thumbnail, although we touch on that in another option I will get to soon. And you have this plus button. If you just click that, it will open up just this browser to search for .setting files. Of course, you can always open up to this full import file or clipboard option, but you can also right click on the plus if you want to import a new macro also from the clipboard. It feels good. But let's look at our main Macro Machine UI. This first area, very similar to the macro builder in Fusion, is just all of the nodes and modifiers that your Fusion composition consisted of. But I have pretty colors. You can search both for nodes and individual controls. If you open up any of these, you will see all of the controls available to you, and you can publish those. And it kicks them right over into this other window. But there's more we are doing or showing off in this nodes panel first. I do have this color coordination that links to the kind of node it is to sort of help you identify similar nodes if that's helpful. And we have tons of convenient options in this settings dropdown. If I open it up, number one, to demonstrate, if I have a few controls I have published from this text effect, we have control view. So if I change this to all controls, it opens up all of those nodes and shows me all of the controls. I can collapse all of them, but then I also have this published only. And that is this third view that just shows me the published controls from each of those nodes. So a little bit of a condensed view. We also have node order. You can have this be by flow, where it actually sort of tracks the composition, how it connects to each other. You can have the comp order, which is kind of how it is pasted in, or alphabetical. This hide replaced controls is for if you have a modifier on a certain control. If you turn this on, we will hide that individual control, so you can't publish that. We have these node type labels, which are those little tags if you want to know what kind of node each of those are. Probably really helpful if you have renamed some of these. If you have instance nodes, you have a visibility option for that, as well as this next node link. You can see I have that. It shows you what each node connects to in the flow, but it takes up some UI space. You can always toggle that off. And then a group of controls for QuickSet. The one available for the free version is the auto group QuickSet. So if I come in, get rid of these controls again, come to this text control, and let's just say I just want to publish the general controls for a text plus node. I could go through, click all of those, or I could click this quick button, click it, boom. a handful of useful controls for the Text Plus node are already auto grouped for you. That's what this control does. If you toggle this off, it will add those controls, but not auto group for you. Hey, let me show. I will get rid of all of those, turn off that setting, and again, add a quick set for all of those. No group. What if at this point you want to add a group? I think I'm good to add on from the nodes. Okay, we'll get back to labeling. I'm going to finish up the nodes panel. You might notice next to this QuickSet button is this set button. This is the first feature that is behind Macro Machine Studio. I have recommended QuickSets built into the free version. The Studio version allows users to customize their own QuickSet for each node type. So if you have your preference, you can swap those out. And we have some additional visibility or sort of control options where you can just click right on the name for the QuickSet or how it interacts with the blend control, because that's a convenient sort of on-off toggle in a lot of these situations. But the free version has these QuickSets that are just, what I thought would be most useful as a quick, throw them in there. And finally, you'll notice I have this little warning icon here because we also have this routing panel that lives in the nodes panel. I pasted in these nodes, and when I did that, Macro Machine noticed that this merge node has an open background input. And if I click that, it says, hey, this input is open. Do you want to use this as an input on the entire effect? I do want to use that. Because I'm going to save this out as an effect. If this was a title or generator, you don't need a valid input, but effects or transitions you do, and I could save that. And we also have this little drop down on the side, which just shows you that same recommended panel without the need for this whole pop-up. And if there is a suggested input and you have not interacted with this routing UI yet, that's when it gives you that little warning. That just sort of says, hey, you might want to look into this because that can be very important. And finally, the last thing you can do in this nodes panel is just hide it completely. If you have pulled over most of the controls you think you want, you can just hide it. That adds this show nodes button up at the top. You can always bring it back. But if you hide it, it moves this published panel over and permanently opens this sort of detail drawer over here. You might have noticed this detail drawer, if you click on any single control, it gives you more info on that single control. If you don't have any controlled, it gives you options for the whole macro, including for things like thumbnail or that operator type, as well as some more just info that's helpful when you're building this kind of stuff. But that allows us to move on to this main sort of work area, the publish control panel. Any controls you add from nodes will live here. Again, you can change the name of the node. So if I call this like newer one, nice. You have export options we will talk about in a bit. So let's talk about general functionality here. Number one, you can drag and drop the order of these. You can select multiple controls if you want, drag them around. You will notice that this is recognizing control groups. So this font and style, resolve, if I look over, sort of, let me find my text. Like sums those together into one control, and the same with color group. So these different color values, Resolve recognizes those as linked together and even gives you some custom controls for them, but they are technically separate controls. Let's talk about that feature. I just talked about labeling or grouping, or how it's called in the new version, nesting. Say I added all of these individual nodes and I wanted them all in one group. Well, the easiest way to do that is just to select all of them. In this create control, I can create label. Label is like the technical term. I might rename this. And boom, we just have one group. It automatically adds all of those. Say you publish like a few more controls. Those will be down on the bottom here now. You could come up to this number value. You could increase that manually, or you could click this set range button. And if you click to the extent you want included in the group, it will increase to include all of that. And then you could close it up if you wanted to. Like I said, if you select this label, you have extra options, whether you want it to default, open, or close. Some more fun stuff that is studio only. But then you have the controls themselves. Something like size, which shows you it is a slider control. You can set the current value and the default and the minimum and maximum. And on all controls, you have the option to add an expression or to use the onChange parameter. This is super powerful, a little bit of custom code that can execute whenever the user interacts with this control, and some of the studio features interact really well with this system. We will show those off too. But let's show off specifically color as well, because a feature I really like in Macro Machine is that when you select this color group, you can enter the hex code for that value. You can also click this icon and this little color picker to select a color here, and then that shows in both of these places, and you have now set the color for the preset natively in Macro Machine. You also have visibility options, whether you want that color control to have the full color wheel or to show those sliders, you can customize that here. Now, we added that label, but you can also add lots of different controls. This arrow is sort of a quick select option for a label, a slider, drop-down control, a button, and a separator. But if you click this create control button itself, you get a bit more control. You can also create that screw option if you want and set some of these defaults right in this window before it is added, or you can just add these and then customize them after the fact. One really cool option is this button. If I, at the bottom here, create a button, you'll notice it's not in that group, but we have this button. And buttons, in addition to expressions and on change, also have a button execute script. If I open this up, I could add a little code here, but you'll notice that by default, it also has this insert link launcher. If I click that, it will add in the code to look at this URL. And if the user clicks that button in your preset in Resolve, it will launch the browser and go to that URL. Really nice for like self-promotion on your presets. Really handy, and it's thrown in there. Next to this create control button is this operations, tons of cool stuff in there. Another option to change between a group and macro operator, as well as to swap out the thumbnail that will be linked to this preset. Once it is attached, you will see it here. All default macros include this sort of settings page, which like has some useful stuff sometime, but it's a lot of boilerplate stuff. So in this operations dropdown, you can just remove that settings page, as well as adding a header image for some extra branding. This fixed extents option is a little niche, but has to do with if you like add a preset and then you extend the duration of it on the edit page. Sometimes that breaks things. This helps that, as well as clean node names. If you have 12 transform nodes in your Fusion composition and you did not customize the name on any of them, you probably have like transform 1_1_1_3. Clean node names cleans that up for you just to help you out. Lots of small nifty stuff right here in the operations dropdown. And before I forget, you might notice this requires Resolve 21 tag. This exists in this loaded macro because I included the new random modifier from the Crocodove tools. Because I added this modifier that only exists in DaVinci Resolve 21, Macro Machine is going to give you a little pop-up saying, hey, just so you know, if you are building this macro to share, the users will need Resolve 21 as well. I thought that was just a nicer thing to do close to the launch of a new version with some new tools you might be building with, just to keep that in mind. Moving on, we have another settings here for mostly visibility options, but specific to this panel. You have an option to toggle on a search bar, again, to search through any of these published controls. And then several options for this whole side of the window. You can see that I have this option for the current values for all of these controls, what page they are on, and then this button, which allows you to jump from that control to show you specifically that control on its source node in the nodes panel. But for all of those, you can completely toggle them off if you want it clean, or only the page option or only the current values to keep it clean. And while we are talking about keeping this clean, we also have this condense controls option. Full mostly means that it also shows you the sort of code here for the control. But if you go to compact, you get rid of that, or you could go to dense to scale things down a little bit more. On larger macros, this might be really nice just to see more in this frame. That might seem like it is most of our UI basics, but it's not, because if I scroll down, you have a little activity feed here that follows along with what you do. And then you have two options, source macro and diagnostics. This is also kind of redundant to diagnostics, but if you toggle this on, you'll get some like specific time codes and options. And again, that was most useful when I was building it. But if you run into errors, diagnostics might be helpful. But this macro source, if I toggle this on, it shows you all the raw code for this macro. And what's more, if I go and do something basic, like change this size instead of a value of point whatever this is. If I change this a value of 0.2, click enter, and I scroll down, then that code jumped to the area where that size default was changed to a value of 0.2. It live edits this code as you go. So again, we're trying to be a learning resource. If you want to dive into the code and see what these changes actually do, just open this up, and then when you make a change, it should jump to and highlight what that change actually did in the code. But I think for most people, they will live here. Sometimes we hide this nodes panel, and that might be most of it. Oh, other than exporting. So we talked about importing. You can import a file or a DRFX this way. You can import from Clipboard. You can load from an installed DRFX or an installed .setting using the Macro Explorer. And then you build or change the macro however you want. And then you have this export drop down. You can export back to Clipboard, which is really nice if you want to do like quick prototyping or just like putting something together to use in Fusion. Export to file gives you that plain .setting. We briefly showed off the export to edit page, but like I really like that, especially the little extra bit on top of this that makes it nicer than the built-in resolve version. Really is the option that you select the individual folder you want to export, and you can add new folders or subfolders in any of these areas. You could add a custom folder inside the effects area just to say like, hey, these are my quick exports from Macro Machine. You could do lots of stuff like that. And then we have export to DRFX. So you could load in multiple macros, give them all thumbnails, stuff like that, export to DRFX in one bulk, and then have that final finished product you can do whatever with. And the other thing to note with the free version, on one of these, I'll do this real quick. Just this option, if I export to Clipboard, exports from the free version or exports from Macro Machine do include this made in Macro Machine tag. It doesn't impact the functionality at all. It's just a little tag on there. That is one of the small trade-offs for using the free version of this pretty incredible tool, I think. Oh, by the way, we added that button ago to launch the browser. And, it launched it over here. But yes, it launched right to that correct browser window. Very nice. Of course, there is more in all the nooks and crannies, but the last big thing I said I was going to come back and show off. So we are going to load in Macro Machine from an installed DRFX. We will come back to these Christmas presets. Let's load in the circle mask this time. So I'm going to load that in from the DRFX. And I will also find that in Resolve, apply it to an effect, load that up in K. So now we have this effect inside Fusion. It's pretty basic. I don't know why this has this merge input. I made this years ago. Anyway, the thing I want to show off. We've already shown how we could change this and updating it by exporting to the source DRFX. But there's one more button next to that, update from Clipboard. It's important we loaded this from the Macro Explorer from the installed DRFX. So it is keeping track of the correct file path for all of this stuff. Now, what if instead of just masking this, I wanted to do something basic, like as it is masking it, it also desaturates it. We make it a black and white mask effect. Well, this brightness and contrast node does that. If you have ever tried to do this, you know that when you have an effect, if you want to add whole nodes to that effect, that can get complicated. A lot of times that would require you to juggle more of these raw .setting files around. No longer. All I did is add that node in. I will just copy the entire thing. And in Macro Machine, with that valid link, now I can update from Clipboard. I click that. And you can see we have replaced that, detected publish controls. This preserves the link, update now. So now, right at the top of my nodes list, I have a brightness and contrast node. I can add that saturation effect, and now I can export to source DRFX. If I go back to my edit page, start from scratch once again on this video clip, and we will see if this updated correctly, but it's circle mask, drop that on, it's black and white, and we have that saturation slider as well for actual control over that. I know for people who have not spent years in this program, you might not fully grasp how cool all of this is. But it's very, very cool. You can go from raw nodes in a Fusion composition, just pasting them in Macro Machine. You can build out full packs. You can export them as a DRFX. You can build complete products for use in the edit page of DaVinci Resolve without ever having to touch a plain dot setting file or open up these presets in a code editor. And not only do you have that ability, you have much more ability than I think you can get anywhere else. Once upon a time, this Macro Explorer was a separate piece of software, but it makes so much sense just inside Macro Machine. The ability to load any installed preset and customize it the way you want to and save out a new copy or save over it. Macro Machine gives you full ownership and control over the macros that you use in DaVinci Resolve. And like I said a while ago at the beginning, this is just the beginning, because built on top of all of this is Macro Machine Studio. The features I have added in Macro Machine Studio are made for pros. I'm very excited to show them off. I don't know if I'm going to do that now. Psych, we're going to do it now. Now, for you. I took a break and came back a day later. Let's talk about Macro Machine Studio. Macro Machine Studio has a handful of pretty big things and then some small things along the way. So I think we're going to talk about what I think is like the big foundational perk of Studio. Then we're going to hit some of the small things and come to some of the other really, really cool, completely new features that are behind that Studio gate. I have Macro Machine Studio loaded now, and right on this splash screen, you'll notice a big new option, Open Macro Workshop. I do really like the base Macro Machine, but looking at the entire workflow of creating presets, especially creating professional preset packs that might include multiple different macros to publish and to share or sell, one thing was really missing, and that was just management and organization for these macros as you built them. So real quick confusion, I've just built a plain little title and then a simple desaturate circle effect. So let's say I grab this title, I import that to the clipboard. I just named this something like Shine Title. And if I click off, I'll go ahead and publish a QuickSet for this text. If I open the workshop, you see the workshop screen. So we're going to go step by step. I'm going to make a new project. I will just call this Awesome Macros. Use that project. And then I can see my preset name is down here. You can select the macro type. I'm going to make that a title. And then this save and publish option. So when I do that, it will, number one, add it as a project preset. But because I also have this auto publish to resolve templates option checked, that means that instantly it also pushed that kind of like a normal export to the edit page would. So this project was named Awesome Macros. So if I come back to my timeline, open my effects library, titles, Macro Machine, Awesome Macros, I see that Shine title and I can toss it right on my timeline. And the big thing with this is this keeps track. So even if we completely closed out or restarted Macro Machine, if I open up Macro Workshop and navigate to that Awesome Macros project, Shine title is there waiting for me. I can go ahead and load selected and start working on that again in Macro Machine. And you'll even notice it gives that little tag here that it is linked to Workshop. And next to the export button, we have that same save and publish. So because that toggle is set to push it out to resolve, whenever I make a change, I can click save and publish, and it will both save that Workshop version and push it out to resolve. So we can do the same thing with the other effect I built. This time it is an effect versus a title. But if I import that from Clipboard and call it like desaturate circle, make sure my routing is on just for that. Hop into a workshop, desaturate circle. This is an effect. I will save and publish that as well. You see that is also there. So now both of these open presets are also live linking to resolve. And this is actually where that functionality for update from Clipboard started. And then I decided to push it back out to the free version for linked DRFX. But you don't need a DRFX for this. If a macro is saved in a workshop project, then you have this update from Clipboard option, which is nice because for something like this desaturate circle, if I actually give myself a new version, I have since published that. So now in effects, Macro Machine, Awesome Macros, I have desaturate circle. I will drop that on. And just like we showed off before, if I decide I want to do a lot more with this effect and do something like add a simple zoom effect, also masked by that same ellipse option, I do that, then I can just copy that entire thing, and back in Macro Machine on Desaturate Circle, this is linked to the workshop, I can update from Clipboard. It gives me my little pop-up. I click Update, and we see now we have that transform option here, and I could publish like the size parameter. I click Save and Publish, and now the other cool thing, back in the workshop, if I select that Desaturate Circle, we have this Snapshots option down here. So as you make changes, push out these changes, or publish to resolve, the Macro Workshop will keep track of those changes for you just in case you need to roll back. If you were managing this just with the raw .setting files in a folder, if you were always live saving over those, you could risk losing some of your work if something goes wrong. Not with snapshots in Macro Workshop. So this gives you so much flexibility. It keeps track of these projects. You can always open up the workshop folder if you want to. But however many macros you build across, those titles, effects, generators, when you're all done, just export a project DRFX. You can add custom additional folders if you want to. You can make sure those titles are linked. You can go from raw nodes for all of your macros to a published professional DRFX pack without ever having to touch the raw files. And you can do that in a well-organized and safe way. This isn't as shiny and exciting as some of the stuff we will show off, but I do think it is essential for the kind of program I want Macro Machine to be, especially live pushing that out to resolve and having this update from Clipboard. It's really nice. Okay, let's talk about some small things. Number one, yes, we do get rid of that made in Macro Machine tag. For Macro Machine Studio, I think that makes the most sense. But also in options, we now have option to this set button. So I demonstrated, let me get rid of this. So that the default QuickSet for a transform control is just these three controls. But what if you really like this aspect and X and Y size options? Well, you could come into this set option and you can say, hey, when I use the QuickSet button, I want these included. You can save set, and then if I start over from scratch, why not go ahead and auto group those? If I click QuickSet, it adds a group with those aspect and X and Y. You can customize these to your preferred controls for each of these node types. Additionally, like I showed off a while ago, we also have this name click and quick publish blend as an on-off. Like I tried to say, lots of controls like this transform have this blend slider. And if you turn this into a checkbox, it's a very convenient on and off checkbox for the entire effect. But the name click equals QuickSet is also a little more advanced but useful. Again, let's just get rid of all of this. Say you loaded in a fresh macro and this is on, and you just really quickly wanted a QuickSet for all of these options. Well, if you have that name click on, you just click the name, click the name, click the name, and you have your brightness and contrast, your ellipse controls, and transform controls all published, possibly with your user-defined QuickSets, in a few seconds. Next thing I really like, I am going to add a new button. Cool. And to quickly demonstrate, you can type whatever code you want in here, but if I insert a link launcher, you'll realize we have some extra useful code styling going on. So some of your different variables and your if-then statements and that, you get this convenient styling, but you also get this live linking. I am going to make, let's make a new drop down. By default, this has us have these three options, but the on-change script is super nice for these dropdowns. So you could build out an expression here or a custom script here being hey, if this option is selected, do this other thing. If this option is selected, change this value. But we have this live linking option to make some of that much easier. So something like these transform controls. If this live linking is on, then I just have to click that drop down and it inserts the correct code for that. So I could be if that equals 0, then go to another control size on that transform equals 1. And if not, and then you build out your code. Getting these names correct is important. And with this live linking, you just have to click. You can also reference these controls that are just on the nodes themselves. And you'll see you also have this like error filtering. I believe the error stuff I kept in the free version as well, because that's important. These are available on that button script and the on-chain script and for expressions as well. Just a few small tools that I think will really appeal to pros diving into some of these options. Make sure to toggle that off as well. One small thing, this button, I have the option for some controls, I believe, yeah, both drop downs and buttons, to pin to the utility bar. This is a little bit of a funky thing. If I do it here and just export to Clipboard and demonstrate, then this desaturate circle, you see it pushed that button from the main workspace to this above area. It still functions, but for some things like the link launcher, maybe you want that a little bit separate from your normal controls, kick it up here. Also, these labels that form these sort of like nest or group options, we have some extra appearance customization. If you want this bold or italic or center, or you want to customize the color of that, it updates that in Macro Machine, not as important, but also on that export inside Resolve. I don't use this a lot, but some people do, so you got the options. All right. You want to get wild? Let's get wild with some completely new features and functionality only available in Macro Machine Studio. Starting with the ability to use spreadsheets or CSVs to drive effects. This is available in a few different ways. The first way we're going to look at is, this super basic lower third I've made. Let's copy that, import it into Macro Machine, and very quickly I'm going to grab the name, the title field, and then just the background color. And then I'm going to come to data, where we have a few options. We can link to a CSV either locally or driven by a URL, but we can also import a Google Sheet. If I click this, I will get this pop-up. And if I grab something like this Google Sheet I have open with just a few different fields, we have first name, last name, a color hex code, and then some other random information. If I grab the URL, as long as it is available to anyone with the link, paste it in here, click import, and then do the important stuff. That will allow me to open up this first text field, and on the current value, we now have this plus icon. If I click that, I can choose what column I want to pull the information from. I want the first name. I will link to the second one. I'm just going to grab the last name, and the color. On that color group, we can connect that to that whole color column. Click link. I will name this something like lower third for now. And then you can even see on the preview here, that first name, we have Dan Davidson. But if I come to data, generate from CSV, it will duplicate this macro for as many rows as we have. Generate from CSV, named after the first name. If I click continue, hey, now we have a Dan and a Bob and a Larry and a Sue. All of those names changing, all of those colors changing. And I can go in and select all of these, and I'm going to export those to the edit page as titles in this test folder. Select that, export to edit page. It's telling me what I exported. Click OK. And then when I hop into Resolve, in my effects library, under titles test, I have all of those lower thirds waiting for me. I'll plan on showing off some of the limits of this. I mean, not even limits of this soon, because I have tested this, generating up to 10,000 new DaVinci Resolve titles at once. This is going to be really big for like larger corporations who might need a lot of customized lower thirds. But of course, linking values to these CSV or these spreadsheets are valuable beyond just mass creating macros based on as many lines as you have. I made this super simple graphic that just shows the results of a race. And then when I made this graphic in Macro Machine, I pulled in the values for all of these text fields from this Google Sheet. So if it was a day later and you needed graphics for a new video on a different race, you could come in here, change this to race 2, change all of these results to something else, and then inside of Resolve, I have this update data button. I have that because in Macro Machine, when I made it, under data, we have this insert data update button. And that's what I did. I added there. And then now when it's in Resolve, I can just click that. It loads Macro Machine, looks at the data that was linked to those fields. It sees I have swapped those out. Do you want to overwrite them? I click overwrite, and that actually swaps out the preset in its source location in Resolve. If I drag a new copy of it down to my timeline, it goes from this is what it was to all the new values. And there are absolutely times when pulling values from that spreadsheet or CSV will be valuable outside of updating presets or bulk creating macros. This is an extremely flexible and powerful system. All right, back one more day later and a whole lot of bug fixes behind the scenes, but we're ready to wrap it up with the last big feature exclusive to Macro Machine Studio, presets. This is a custom presets engine, and if you have any familiarity with my big proto plugin, I functioned this feature off of that. I like it so much. Let me show it off. So I have this title here, right? It's just a blobby shape in a solid color and text over it. What if I just copy that into Macro Machine? I have already built this, so it already has published controls, right? I'm going to copy this in and then leave it because I'm going to go back to this macro in Fusion, and I'm just going to change this color and change this path a good bit. Just change it up. And then once again, copy that, paste it into Macro Machine, and then let's just do it again. This time we'll make it blue. Move this over here, move this over there, maybe down there, and back there. Copy it one more time, paste it in, and hey, a final one. Why don't we just make this black, add a point here, stretch that out there. Cool. So now in Macro Machine, we have 4 copies of the same macro, the exact same published controls, but a few of those controls have been modified between the versions. But now I can come in and I'm going to select all 4 of these, come to that same data tab, come down to presets engine. We get a new pop-up and we see all 4 copies that we have here, but we also have this value scope on the right. This presets engine will generate a drop-down control for you. And when you click through the drop-downs, it will jump between the values that were present on all of the reference macros that you attach here. And this value scope will dictate which controls are going to be overridden with this control. So I'm actually going to select none of these and only select this color for the background and the polyline that we changed. I'm going to build presets pack. Oh, I'm actually going to remove that because I am going to rename these to just red, green, blue, black. You have to reset this value scope when you do that. So I just want these colors and the polyline. Now I can click build the preset pack and we see it adds this little drop down which you can select and see those options. And then if we just export to Clipboard and paste that in Resolve or in the Fusion page, we see that initial red shape and color. But if I change that preset, it changes to the color and the shape that corresponded to each of those macros that I brought into Macro Machine when I built the preset. And because I limited that scope, if I come into this text and change it to something like and subscribe, and then change the presets, the text stays exactly the same because that is not being overridden by these presets. The only values that are changing, if I open up these background controls, are the color and the path for that polygon mask. This is extremely powerful for building out presets for your own custom macros, but you could also do this on top of any existing macro. You could load in a macro from a DRFX that you use if you know you like one macro, but oftentimes you just customize it between a handful of options. Make those options preset, drop them all in Macro Machine, bundle them up, and you have a really convenient quick select option here. As you can see, there is a lot in Macro Machine, and even more in Macro Machine Studio. Macro Machine has been in open beta for a little bit now, but with this video, I am launching Macro Machine Studio, so that will be available for purchase at a different link down in the description. If you are all about creating these macros and the extra tools available in Macro Machine Studio feel like they would be super helpful to you, especially things like that macro workshop, I really like that, then you can check that out. Like I said, I've been working on Macro Machine for, at this point, many months. I am so happy to finally get it out there, and your support will absolutely help make a little bit of that time investment worth it. This was much more a labor of love for myself and the community. I can't wait to use Macro Machine to make more stuff, and I really think I have made it like the best tool out there for this kind of thing. But mostly I am just extremely excited to be able to show all of this off to all of you. Thank you for watching. I really think this is just super cool. Hopefully you do too. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.